Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are kindly asking you to take your seats. Hanımlar ve canablar, yerlerinizi almanızı xahiş edirik.
Hadi ben oy. Bir.
Tacıklar 3'te çatmayacaklar bağlantışı dediler. Çünkü 2'de onlarda abet. 3'ü eləyək dəqiq üçün hamısına proqramları var.
Yok, o IPU ile razılaştırılmalıdır. Yok, IPU gedişat var mı? Az. Ama mən istəyirəm qabı düşsün. Deyəm, mən buna speech deliver edirəm. Necəsə belə olur ki, mən də speech deliver edirəm. O düşür ya akşam ucundan bax neydi ya?
So I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, dear participants, today is the second day of the parliamentary meeting of the occasion of the 29th United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. And you will get acquainted with the recap of the first day to the end. I inviting Ms. Alexandra Blagayevich, Program Manager of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Ms. Blagayevich, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Esteemed parliamentarians, distinguished delegates, and honored guests, on behalf of the IPU Secretariat, it is a privilege to welcome you back to day 2 of our parliamentary meeting at COP29. I would like to begin by reiterating our gratitude to our host, the Milli Majlis of the Republic of Azerbaijan, for their hospitality and their invaluable support in organizing this gathering. Yesterday, parliaments from around the world came together, unified by a shared commitment to addressing the profound challenges posed by climate change. The rich discussions covered several very important topics and provided us with a vivid reminder of what is at stake. Through the voices of parliamentarians and individuals directly affected by the impacts of climate change from Chad to Tonga, we were reminded that collective actions must extend beyond words and promises. They must translate into tangible, meaningful progress for communities most at risk. We began with a look at the climate commitments made under the Paris Agreement, discussing the essential role of parliaments in driving and implementing the nationally determined contributions. The discussions highlighted how parliaments play a fundamental role in transforming global climate goals into enforceable actions at the national level. The sessions on climate finance brought attention to the importance of equitable financial mechanisms to support nations that are most vulnerable to climate change impacts, especially in mobilizing resources and ensuring sustainable and accessible climate finance. Finally, we discussed enhancing climate resilience and adaptation, empowering local communities and enabling them to shape and implement sustainable practices. Yesterday's conversations and contributions made it clear that the solutions we seek require both top-down policy and grassroots action. Today, we will discuss the unique vulnerabilities of different regions, equitable access to climate technology, the impact of climate change on health and food security. We will also discuss legislative responses to climate-induced migration. Each of these themes builds on yesterday's discussions, aiming to further empower parliaments in driving effective climate action. Thank you for your participation, dedication, and for joining us on this second day of the parliamentary meeting at COP29. With that, I will now hand over to our Master of Ceremonies to lead us into the day's proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blagojevich. And now we are continuing and we begin our session 6 dedicated to efforts of safeguard health and food security in the face of the changing climate. And moderator of the session is Mr. Chris Lowe, member of the Parliament of the United Kingdom. May I invite moderator and the panelists on stage, please? And I'm wishing success and moderating the session. We are calling moderator of the session, Mr. Chris Lowe. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. It's
Oh, okay.
Jacqueline among them.
I'm really sorry. So we are continuing with the session 4 is dedicated to addressing climate vulnerability, promoting a comprehensive and equitable approach to climate action. Moderator of the session is Ms. Jacqueline Amongjin, member of the Parliament, East African Legislative Assembly. May I invite the moderator and the panelists to the stage?
Okay, the President, IPU, all protocol observed. My name is Jacqueline Amongin, member of the East African Legislative Assembly, and I'll be taking you through this session this morning. I would like to invite in the panel our distinguished panelists, that is Ms. Jan Bigal, Director General, International Development Law Organization, Mr. David Porter, Strategic Group, Lead Regional Action and Global Advocacy, International Center for International Mountain Development, Honorable Jeremy Adamatho, Member of the National Assembly of Benin, Ms. Catherine Wong, UNDP, Climate Promise. Please, panelists, come over to the front. Okay, so good morning. Esteemed parliamentarians and guests, welcome to session 4 entitled Addressing Climate Vulnerability, Promoting a Comprehensive and Equitable Approach to Climate Action. Climate vulnerability is an issue that affects each region uniquely, from small island developing states facing rising sea levels to mountainous and landlocked areas encountering distinct environmental challenges. Building on yesterday's insights to the real-life impacts of climate change, this session will dive into how we can support and address the unique climate vulnerabilities faced by countries with distinct environmental challenges. Our focus will be on how parliaments can advance policies that recognize these differences and promote resilience. We are fortunate to have with us today experts who will share their perspectives on their critical topics. After their presentations, we will invite contributions from the floor. To begin, I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Jan Bigal, Director General of the International Development Law Organization, which works to empower communities to claim their rights while equipping governments with the expertise needed to uphold them. Over to you, Ms. Bigal. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and good morning, Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, dear Martin, Excellencies, and distinguished guests. It's really a pleasure to speak to you today on behalf of the International Development Law Organization, because as we all know, the rule of law can be a powerful means for addressing climate vulnerability. And as has been explored in previous sessions, the causes and effects of the climate crisis are closely linked to issues of fairness, justice, and equity. And while climate change affects everyone, it does not do so equally. It is a magnifier of existing vulnerabilities and inequalities, and it is those who are least responsible for climate change, women, children, indigenous peoples, and marginalized communities who are often the most affected. And communities and groups at the front lines of the crisis frequently have little say in climate-related decision-making. And so for these reasons, IDLO is a proponent of applying a justice lens to climate action to ensure that it is both effective and equitable. So the term climate justice may mean different things to different people, but at the core of the concept is the realization that addressing justice issues, thank you, sir. Okay, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. So I was saying that the term climate justice may mean different things to different people, but at the core of the concept is the realization that addressing justice issues must be part of the response to climate change. And IDLO's approach to climate justice seeks to advance transformative climate action by investing in people-centered laws and institutions to enable ambitious climate action while equitably distributing costs and benefits, by addressing pre-existing vulnerabilities and inequalities and prioritizing the most climate vulnerable communities, by ensuring fair and inclusive climate decision-making, and by building justice systems that can fairly resolve climate-related disputes. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has found that prioritizing justice, equity, and inclusive governance in climate action leads to more effective and sustainable outcomes. But climate justice is not just about fairness. It's also about ensuring that societies thrive and remain resilient in the face of unprecedented climate challenges. Ignoring inequalities risks deeper societal divisions, which can erode social cohesion, economic growth, and political stability. And empowering marginalized groups to contribute to climate solutions can unlock untapped potential and drive economic growth. And addressing inequality as part of climate action can help build public trust in government institutions and help secure public buy-in for climate measures. Drawing on IDLO's 4 decades of experience working across more than 100 countries, I'd like to share quickly 3 ways in which the rule of law can accelerate climate action and the critical role of parliamentarians. First, the rule of law is essential in creating the trust and stability needed for international climate agreements to succeed. When countries commit to climate targets, strong legal and regulatory frameworks are needed to translate those commitments into action to ensure compliance and accountability. Parliamentarians are essential in building this trust through transparent, consistent, and enforceable laws. By enacting policies that promote green growth, such as incentives for renewable energy, climate-resilient infrastructure, and sustainable industries, you can create the conditions for economic development that benefit both people and planet. Clear and enforceable laws give businesses the confidence to invest in green technologies and innovation, driving progress towards a low-carbon future. And when commitments are honored and there is accountability for climate action, it then builds the trust needed for deeper collaboration. And this cooperation is key for tackling the transnational challenges such as carbon emissions, as well as issues related to loss and damage, which becomes particularly important as we look towards the new collective quantified goal on climate finance. Second, the rule of law can help catalyze the contribution of women and girls in the fight against climate change, because we know that climate change is not gender neutral. Women are disproportionately affected by climate impacts due to unequal access to resources, discriminatory social norms, and economic barriers. But at the same time, women are powerful agents of change. Across the world, women are key players in food production and food land management. Of course, they often face systemic barriers to accessing land, credit, and climate resilient technologies. And by removing these barriers and supporting women farmers with secure land rights, training, and resources, parliamentarians can help to boost agricultural productivity, enhance food security, and strengthen community resilience. Research consistently shows that when women are involved in decision-making, climate policies and programs are more effective and sustainable. But women still remain underrepresented in climate and environmental decision-making at all levels, nationally and internationally. This week in Baku, of the 78 heads of state and government who were in the leaders' photograph, only 8 were women. So we do have far to go. IDLO works to raise awareness of the importance of eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. So for example, we recently collaborated with the Philippines to conduct a comprehensive legal assessment of the gender responsiveness of over 50 domestic laws and regulations with a climate or environmental dimension and make specific recommendations for action. So parliaments can ensure that women and girls are full partners in climate action by enacting gender-responsive climate legislation, ensuring women's equal participation in leadership roles, and supporting initiatives that expand access of women and girls to education, technology, and economic opportunities. Third, and finally, the rule of law can empower people and communities to contribute to transformative climate action. Participatory governance gives people a voice in decisions related to climate action, ensuring that they are responsive to local needs and therefore more sustainable. IDLO promotes inclusive decision-making, particularly at the community level. For example, last year, we supported Kilifi County in Kenya to develop climate change legislation and policies to strengthen that county's climate resilience, integrate climate action across development sectors, and ensure that marginalized groups have a voice in decision-making. This involved a participatory climate risk assessment with diverse stakeholders and the development of adaptation strategies. Parliaments can enact laws that preserve civic space and protect the rights of Indigenous peoples, women, migrants, and other vulnerable groups. And this, of course, includes recognizing land rights, providing legal recourse, and ensuring access to justice for those affected by climate change. And we have found it is also crucial to engage with customary and informal justice systems, which govern land use and serve as the primary means of resolving climate-related disputes in many communities. So, for example, we are supporting the establishment of mobile alternative dispute resolution centers in Somalia and Somaliland that provide free, locally legitimate mechanisms for solving disputes, ensuring that culturally sensitive justice services are available, which are also aligned with international standards, and they have been able to address many climate-related disputes effectively. So these are just some examples of how a rule of law approach can accelerate climate action, and climate justice starts with parliamentarians. In summary, by enacting laws and policies that enable climate action, promote inclusive governance, and protect the rights of vulnerable populations, you can transform lives and accelerate progress towards a more peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future. IDLO looks forward to working with all of you in this effort, and I look forward to our discussion this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Bigel, for taking us through the climate vulnerabilities, climate justice, and the role of Parliament in this discourse, and this has been very enriching, and applaud to her. I would like, therefore, now to welcome none other than Mr. David Porter, who is the Strategic Group Lead, Regional Action and Global Advocacy at the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Mr. Porter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm David Potter. ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, represents 8 countries that have territory in the Hindu Kush Himalaya mountain region. The Hindu Kush Himalaya is also, I think, you can think of that as the People's Pole. 271 million people live in the Hindu Kush Himalaya mountains themselves. And those mountains are facing a planetary crisis. Too loud. It's closer. Okay. I must be sitting near the speakers. It sounds loud to me. Is that better? Yes. Okay, good. People can hear me now. That's an improvement. I was saying the Hindu Kush Himalaya is an area that's being impacted more rapidly and more significantly by climate change, by the effects of climate change, than the rest of the world. And that's because warming resulting from climate change is elevation dependent. So at higher altitudes, temperatures are increasing faster. And across the Hindu Kush Himalaya, those temperatures are increasing twice as fast as the average around the globe. That's having massive impacts in the region. Glaciers, which provide drinking water to over 2 billion people, are melting, and that's resulting in water scarcity across the region. At the same time, there's an increased rate of floods and landslides causing damage and impacts across the region. But it's not just climate change that's the risk in the mountains. There are also mountain-specific factors that mean that people living in the mountains are marginalized and vulnerable. For example, on average, there is a lower agricultural output in mountain regions. Often markets are further distant, so it takes people longer to take produce to market and sell them. And also, there are complex issues of gender dynamics, which mean that men and women are not given equal roles in the mountains. And if you look at the development indicators for mountain areas, specifically within countries, those are lower than across the average for the countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya. The additional problem is that people living in these areas have a lower adaptive capacity, so they have a more limited ability to respond to these impacts, both the impacts of living in mountain regions and the impacts of climate change themselves. So they've got less of a margin of safety. And this problem is getting so dire in some parts of the Himalayas that villages are becoming uninhabitable. And that's because landslides and floods are literally destroying people's homes, and people are losing their lives. And they're thinking these places are too dangerous to live. But also there are slower acting impacts. I mentioned water scarcity. Water supplies are becoming scarcer, and people aren't able to get drinking water, particularly in the summer months. And the result of this is, I've seen this in areas like Mustang, in Nepal, Uttarakhand, in India. Whole villages of people are now leaving the mountain regions, and they're moving out of the mountains to the lowlands. And this is a real problem. The first reason why this is a real problem is that by losing these mountain communities, we're also losing mountain culture. These communities have their own specific cultures that have grown up over centuries, and these are being destroyed as the people are moving out of the regions. And that's having an impact on the youth of these regions, who are also forgetting the ways of their fathers and their mothers. And there's an impact on urbanization, because the majority of people leaving mountain regions move to urban centres, and this creates another set of challenges: pollution, urban sprawl, and ongoing outmigration of young people to other countries outside of the Himalayan mountain region. And these are challenges that need to be addressed quickly because the problems are happening now. The IPCC Adaptation Gap Report of 2024 said that around half the measures that we're currently implementing to help people to adapt to these changing mountain climates and environments are not effective, or they need ongoing finance. They need more money to keep going. So what we're doing at the minute is fairly ineffective. ICIMOD published a report called the Highwise Report in 2023 that looked at exactly this issue. And one of the conclusions we came to was that one of the only ways you can respond to this challenge is by addressing all the issues holistically. You need to look at the whole package at once. It's not okay just to look at agricultural output on its own or flood risk on its own. You need to take the whole package. And the second thing you need to do is you need to think about the world from the point of view of those village communities and those people living up there. What are the issues that are important to them? How do they combine together to make their lived experience of the mountains? And if we can understand that lived experience in a detailed way, and we can respond to that, and we can provide finance to address the issues that they're facing, then that could be a roadmap to success. I'm very pleased to see this level of interest from parliamentarians around the world in the issue of vulnerability. I think it's a really vital and important issue, and it should be a central issue to the COP negotiations. So I'm really hoping that in the second week of the negotiations, this issue can be taken forwards by you and by others, and also beyond COP, because this is a challenge that's building. It's not here just for 2 weeks, and it's going to impact on these areas and these people long into the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Porter, for your perspective on such an important topic. I'm now pleased to introduce Ms. Honorable Jeremy Adamahu, member of the National Assembly of Benin, to share important parliamentary insights into this topic. Over to you, Honorable.
Bonjour à tous. Je suis Jérémy Adomaou, député à l'Assemblée nationale du Bénin, coordonnateur du réseau eau, assainissement, climat et développement durable. Je suis dans une délégation de 2 députés, mon collègue Ronfort Charlemagne, que je prie de se lever pour que vous puissiez le saluer. Nous sommes heureux d'être invités à cette COP29 et aussi fiers de participer à ce panel de haut niveau. Comme vous le savez, depuis 2018, le Bénin a été reconnu comme l'un des pays les plus vulnérables au monde face aux effets néfastes des changements climatiques. Le Bénin a été classé 155e sur 181 pays en 2018 comme l'un des pays les plus vulnérables. Dans ce contexte, il est important de mettre en place des politiques publiques sereines, claires, efficientes pour contrer le phénomène. Cela commence par la législation. C'est ainsi que le cadre législatif du Bénin sur les changements climatiques est très riche et diversifié. Il intègre tous les domaines sensibles où les activités humaines peuvent aggraver le phénomène de changement climatique. Les efforts du Bénin témoignent de sa volonté politique de juguler le fléau et d'atténuer le phénomène, même si les moyens financiers dont dispose le Bénin ne sont pas à la hauteur de nos ambitions. Le Bénin est partie à de nombreuses conventions internationales. On peut citer la Convention cadre des Nations Unies pour le changement climatique, le protocole de Kyoto, l'accord de Paris, etc. Mais aussi la réglementation nationale et à la Constitution du Bénin qui exige un environnement sain à toute la population. Et il y a aussi les deux lois, la loi cadre sur l'environnement et la loi sur les changements climatiques, qui constituent le socle de la législation en matière de changement climatique. Mais il faut dire que le Bénin ne s'est pas arrêté à ces deux lois. Ces deux lois ont engendré d'autres lois, comme la loi sur les déchets chimiques et leurs produits, la loi sur la gestion intégrée des ressources en eau, la loi sur les énergies renouvelables, la loi sur les littorales. Et donc, c'est ainsi que le Bénin a constitué son plan législatif pour combattre le phénomène de lutte contre les changements climatiques. Mais il ne suffit pas seulement de s'arrêter au niveau des lois votées et promulguées. Il faut, à travers cette loi, mettre en place des projets et programmes qui permettent d'atteindre les objectifs escomptés. Donc c'est dans ce cadre qu'au niveau de la vulnérabilité, on peut citer quelques exemples dont souffre le pays, à savoir la perturbation du calendrier agricole, et la forte récurrence des inondations et de la sécheresse au Bénin, et l'érosion des côtes béninoises et la concentration des gaz à effet de serre due aux actions humaines. Et sur le plan économique, on observe une augmentation des dépenses publiques contre une diminution des recettes. Mais une fois le côté législatif mis en place, une fois les conventions internationales signées, adoptées, ratifiées, une fois les lois nationales prises contre le changement climatique, il faut maintenant les traduire à travers des politiques publiques. Et dans un premier temps, au milieu de chaque année, nous faisons ce que nous appelons le débat d'orientation budgétaire pour voir au niveau du gouvernement les lignes qui sont présentées pour contrer les impacts, les conséquences du changement climatique. Et de ce fait, le Bénin a adopté depuis, disons, 3 ans, ce que nous appelons le budget sensible au changement climatique. Et après l'évaluation du plan national d'adaptation du Bénin, nous avons mis la priorité sur 8 secteurs. Il y a le secteur de l'agriculture, le secteur de l'eau, de l'énergie, les aménagements urbains, le tourisme. Et donc, tous ces secteurs, on veille au niveau du Parlement, déjà depuis le débat d'orientation budgétaire, les budgets alloués à ces secteurs conformément aux conventions internationales que nous avons adoptées et aussi aux lois nationales. Donc c'est ainsi qu'au niveau de l'agriculture, par exemple, des mesures fiscales ont été prises. Nous avons par exemple l'exonération sur les produits agricoles, pour les paysans. Au niveau des aménagements urbains, nous avons par exemple l'exonération sur les véhicules neufs, ce qui va réduire la pollution. Chez nous au Bénin, plus le véhicule est neuf, moins vous payez de taxes de douane, et lorsque le véhicule est beaucoup plus usagé, plus vous payez de taxes, ce qui encourage à aller vers les véhicules neufs et donc réduire la pollution. Et donc, au niveau de l'agriculture aussi, il y a ce que nous appelons la Société béninoise des semences pour utiliser les résultats de recherche scientifiques pour produire des semences hybrides à haut rendement pour permettre d'accroître les rendements agricoles et la résilience au changement climatique, ce qui va permettre de lutter contre, la sécurité alimentaire ou lutter contre l'insécurité alimentaire et d'assurer la souveraineté alimentaire. Donc voilà un peu les différents éléments, l'effort que le Bénin fait dans le cadre de la lutte des changements climatiques après le corpus législatif et la mise en œuvre à travers le budget. Mais vous savez que les moyens dont dispose le Bénin pour atteindre son ambition sont limités. Nous faisons de notre mieux et il faut que les gros pollueurs, les États qui polluent suffisamment contribuent afin de permettre au Bénin de lever des fonds pour la mise en œuvre efficace de ces objectifs. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Honorable Jeremy. And I would like to thank you for sharing your insights on what Benin is doing, the different legislative frameworks that the Parliament of Benin has put in place, and what we need to pick from the specific examples that you've given related to Benin. An applause to Honorable Jeremy. I would like now to welcome, yes, merci beaucoup. I would like to welcome our last panelist, who is none other than Ms. Catherine Wong, and she's from UNDP Climate Promise. Over to you, Ms. Catherine.
Great, thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you to the organizers for this opportunity to share some of our work and a perspective from our portfolio in climate change, which we are implementing now in 140 countries around the world. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, great, so the mic seems to be working, it's close enough. Right, so first of all, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think when we're looking back over the last year and over recent years, what we see is that not only are we experiencing some of the hottest temperatures that we have seen to date, but also at the same time, the highest levels of conflict since the UN was created, right? So the highest levels of conflict since World War II. And what we find is that many of these countries that are most affected by conflict also suffer from climate change. So there's really a critical need here to look in terms of climate change vulnerability, in terms of climate risk, in terms of climate hazards as well, about how they are interacting and exacerbating drivers of conflict, fragility, and violence. So this is, it's very important. It's very important to the communities that we serve because, again, because of the number of the countries that are affected and because of how our climate change policies have been developed. You know, and if you look at the Paris Agreement, if you look at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and if you're looking at the Kyoto Protocol, what you'll see is there isn't a single reference to conflict or fragility or peace or security, right? So what it means is that fragility, violence, conflict, it's effectively a blind spot in terms of climate action and also in terms of our adaptation ambitions. What it also means is that those countries which are affected by conflict and fragility also suffer the lowest levels of climate finance. So there are huge risks that we need to take into account when we're looking at global climate governance, when we're bringing it down to a national level as well, and looking at nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement and also national adaptation plans. If we look at the work of the Global Environmental Facility, it conducted an evaluation back in 2020, and what it found was that violent conflict was the #1 obstacle to all of its implementation in all of its different focal areas, right? So the #1 cause of postponement of programmed initiatives, #1 cause of delays once projects were implemented, right? And then also the #1 cause of poor final term evaluations. So we're not talking about kind of a direct causal relationship between climate and conflict, but as Jan mentioned just now as well, the kind of multiplier effects of climate change in countries that are already experiencing insecurity, violence, fragility, and conflict. So another factor I think that we need to take into account when we're talking about small island developing states, mountainous countries, also countries in the Sahel and Horn of Africa, among others, is the impact of climate change on displacement. So if you take a look at the data from the World Bank's groundswell, back in 2021, what they found was that focusing on 6 different sub-regions, an estimated 200 million people will be displaced internally by climate change by mid-century. This, for me personally, ends up being at the lower end of this scale, right? There are other figures, you know, if you look at UNHCR, if you look at the Institute of Economics and Peace, and their figures are much more alarming, and I think perhaps maybe even closer to the reality that we're seeing, and that is displacement of about 1.2 billion people. So these are incredible numbers that we need to think about. You know, if you look year by year, cumulatively, conflict cumulatively has displaced 10 times as many people as climate. But in recent years, climate has outpaced conflict as the #1 driver of displacement. So at some point, we will see a convergence here, and we will likely see that climate change will be an even bigger driver in terms of displacement. So this is something that we need to think about in terms of our NDCs, in terms of our NAPs, in terms of the policies that you are enacting, that you are delivering on as parliamentarians. So what are we doing about this as UNDP? Well, first of all, UNDP is the largest implementer of support to nationally determined contributions, not only within the UN system, but within the world at the moment. We support something like 85% of developing countries in developing their NDCs. Since 2019, that support has been provided to 140 different countries around the world, and it's really about raising ambition, it's about accelerating implementation, and also ensuring inclusivity, all of government, all of society approaches, as you've heard the other panelists mention just now as well. Overall, we support something like 50 countries that are 50 fragile states, 50 countries that are affected by conflict and fragility in implementing, but also designing their NDCs. There's a critical component here that we also need to think about in terms of making sure that NDCs, that NAPs, that our climate plans and strategies are implementable, that they're investable, that make sense, and they also connect and speak to our national development plans. So the policy and legislation aspects of this we cannot underestimate. At the very same time, with the very high levels of conflict and fragility that we are seeing, we also need to make sure that our climate plans speak to our peace building, to our conflict prevention strategies, and that we engage as best as possible communities that are in mountainous areas, that are in low-lying coastal areas, that are likely to suffer from increased marginalization, again, due to climate and its interactions with other drivers of poverty, of conflicts and fragility. So just to say thank you very much for the opportunity to share some of our work. I think there's so much more that we need to do. At the moment, we've seen something like 170 countries announce that they're going to be updating their NDCs by 2025. We're just a year away from the third generation of NDCs, and there are so many opportunities, again, to make sure that these climate policies can work better for developing countries and for those countries most affected by conflict and fragility. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine Wong, for those remarks, and also putting in place raising issues on the nexus between peace, conflict, and climate change. And yeah, would like to applaud you in a special way. I now would like to applaud all our panelists before we go to the floor. And honorable members and distinguished guests, we have many people who would like to take the floor, but I would like to encourage that we do less than 2 minutes. If you go beyond 2 minutes, we are going to cut you short, right? Agreed, the ayes have it. So please restrict your experiences to less than 2 minutes, and let us know of what you're doing in your different member states. Thank you so much. I would therefore like to take the floor to invite none other than Ms. Jae Park from the Republic of Korea. Jae Park, please speak from there. Do not come this side. That's why I've decided to stand. We would like to see you speak from that side. Thank you. Jae Park. The microphone is moving around. Please restrict your contribution to less than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. Honorable Chair, dear colleagues, my name is Jae Park. I'm a member of National Assembly of the Republic of Korea. I used to work as a climate lawyer representing youth and citizens demanding changes. Now I'm very excited to meet you all here in the parliamentary meeting, actually discuss about how to make changes by ourselves. In relation to the topic of this session, I would like to add a little bit of a new dimension for discussion. I would like to talk about respecting rights of youth and future generations during the lawmaking process. The National Assembly of Republic of Korea, we enacted the Framework Act on Climate Change early in 2010. In 2012, we adopted legislation to establish a nationwide emissions trading scheme. But still, we have not succeeded in cutting down emissions. In 2021, the government strengthened the 2030 target, and also the National Assembly enacted a new Framework Act to provide a robust foundation for implementation. According to this law, last year, the government set annual sector targets up to 2030, and we established the Climate Crisis Response Fund and introduced a new budgeting scheme to measure how we invest in carbon reductions. But still, it is lacking to meet the national target, and in response to the youth litigation in August, the Constitutional Court of Korea, they found that the current Framework Act is unconstitutional because it lacks reduction targets beyond 2030 up to 2050. The court said it would shift an excessive burden to the future generations and violate the constitutional right. Now, we must amend the Framework Act to ensure sustained and effective emissions reduction. At the same time, we must hold government ministries accountable for meeting the current reduction targets. Expanding the scope of the carbon budgeting scheme is critical because currently the Korea government spends only about 1.8% of the national budget for emissions reductions. Honorable delegates, youth voices can be easily neglected simply because their political rights are often restricted. We have an obligation to provide better answers to them when designing a climate policy and give them a chance to take part in policy-making process. Increasing our ambition for short-term targets and policy measures, not to shift the burden to the future, should be the top priority when submitting 2035 NDC next year. I look forward to hearing your valuable insights and perspectives and assure that the Korean National Assembly remains committed to respecting the rights of future generations and advancing climate legislation. Thank you.
Hear me? Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you, Park. I would like to restrict us to less than 2 minutes. Otherwise, it will be very hard for us. If you want to read the whole statement, it's going to be very hard. Be specific. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Now, I would like to invite Honorable Senator Fabrice Nkuruziza from Burundi Republic.
Merci de m'accorder la parole. Je suis honorable Nkuruziza Fabrice, vice-président du Sénat burundais. Excellence Madame la Présidente de l'IUP, Excellence Honorable Président des Chambres et représentants des délégations, Honorables Mesdames et Messieurs, tout protocole observé, bonjour. Permettez-moi de remercier d'abord l'Union interparlementaire et le Parlement de la République d'Azerbaïdjan pour l'organisation de cet événement mondial très important pour l'avenir de notre planète et l'accueil chaleureux qui nous a été réservé. Les changements climatiques constituent une menace très sérieuse qui plane sur notre planète et frappe de façon inégalitaire tous les pays du monde, avec une intensité plus élevée sur les pays en développement moins nantis en ressources et en technologie. Au Burundi, les effets du changement climatique se traduisent par des pluies torrentielles, des éboulements de terre, des inondations qui provoquent la destruction des champs et cultures, des infrastructures, des habitations, et le déplacement des ménages, etc. Dans nos pays, les efforts d'atténuation et d'adaptation sont jusqu'à présent limités car les moyens financiers et technologiques se révèlent toujours insuffisants. En effet, alors que le budget alloué au fonds pertes et dommages n'a pas bougé depuis une décennie, la seule Afrique qui compte 17 pays des 20 dilemmas touchés par les effets du changement climatique a réclame plusieurs centaines de milliards par an pour parler au prix pressé. Vous comprenez bien que ce rendez-vous de la COP29 est très attendu et doit impérativement pencher sur des actions plus concrètes plutôt que de s'en tenir à des déclarations d'intention et des vœux pieux sans aucun geste. Il faut agir et agir au plus vite possible car la case mondiale est en flamme à cause du réchauffement climatique. Ici, la conscience et la solidarité de toute la famille humaine sont mises à l'épreuve. L'action attendue est l'augmentation du budget alloué au fonds, pertes et dommages, ainsi que l'arrangement des conditions de déblocage en faveur des pays et des régions qui émettent moins de gaz, mais qui en payent le plus lourd facture. Les parlements du monde doivent exiger. Il en va de la survie de l'humanité. À défaut, nous sommes voués à périr tous ensemble. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Honorable Senator. I would like to give the floor to Andrei Jeniz of Russia.
Dear colleagues, dear Chair, I'm Andrei Denisov from the Foreign Affairs Committee, Senate, Russian Federation. Please adjust your earphones, I'll speak Russian. Уважаемые коллеги, все мы согласны с тем, что мир находится в состоянии нарастающей климатической турбулентности. Потепление бьет рекорды за всю историю.
at the Worldometer information website of the compositions. Madam, I will address you from parliamentary context, Madam Speaker. I insist that because you will find the merit of where I'm coming from. The lack of global approach. For example, since the Paris Agreement in 2015, and all the historical agreements that have been established among leaders to retain 1.5 degrees Celsius, this year is the most, we have the hottest day, hottest sea, and in the last 16 months, 15 months have break the record of the hottest month. Point that I'm trying to say, if we're going to repeat the same thing over and over again, there is a definitions from Einstein about that. Despite all this effort, I still don't see, and I must applaud Japan, Iran, and Russia for being here. 90% of carbon emissions rests with the first 40 countries. Where I come from, in the list of the list, 71 countries, beginning from Papua New Guinea, right down to Tonga, right down to the Falkland Island. Add them together, they're only 0.18% carbon emissions, contribution to the global warming. 90% of the carbon emissions rest on the first 40, and 60% rest on the first 5, and 70% on the first 10. And to me, that's where the conversation should focus. Their responsibility, because we have, if we don't have an NCT, if we don't have legislations, if we do nothing, we are not harming nobody. But we are the innocent victim of this whole global phenomena, climate change. Climate change.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you so much. Clap for Honourable. Yes, and we've taken your point. Thank you so much. We appreciate.
I insist, Madam Chair, that I complete. Yesterday, I wanted to have a space, but give me another 2 minutes to complete this.
No, these other people want also to speak, but we've got your point. I guess we can proceed.
The point that I'm trying to say, there's
okay,
no use of them
in less than 5 seconds, summarize.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me summarize. We are at the mercy of the biggest emitter. We are at the mercy of this platform, IPU, UNCC, or COP29. We are at their mercy. We have no contribution to this global warming, yet we receive the consequences of the bigger country building their wealth from burning fossil fuel. It's about time that they share their wealth with the rest of the innocent victims in the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tonga. Can I have Honorable Nasser Al-Haidi, Qatar? Qatar? Yes. Please, less than 2 minutes, kindly.
السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يشرفني المشاركة في هذه الجلسة الهامة التي تناقش تأثير تغير المناخ على الدول وكيفية تعزيز ونهج شامل ومنصف للتصدي لهذه التحديات. إن تأثير تغيرات المناخ يختلف من دولة لأخرى ويتطلب استجابة متكاملة. وخصوصا للدول الأكثر عرضة لهذه التأثيرات مثل الدول الجزرية الصغيرة والدول الجبلية وغير الساحلية. إن الاستراتيجيات الوطنية لدولة قطر تسعى دائما قطر إلى تقليل انبعاثات الغازات الدفيئة من خلال الاستراتيجية الوطنية للتغير المناخي 2021 إلى 2030 التي ترتكز على تعزيز الطاقة المتجددة ورفع كفاءة استخدام الطاقة وزيادة الاعتماد على الطاقة الشمسية وطاقة الرياح. وعلى سبيل المثال تم إطلاق مشروع محطة الضعاين للطاقة الشمسية والذي يعد أحد المشاريع الأكبر في المنطقة ويهدف إلى إنتاج 500 ميجا واط من الكهرباء من الطاقة الشمسية بحلول 2025. تعتبر هذه المبادرات جزءاً من استراتيجية شاملة لتحويل الاقتصاد القطري نحو مستقبل أكثر. وفي التعاون الدولي ودعم الدول النامية لا يمكن لقطر أن تعمل بمفردها في هذا المجال، لذا فإننا نولي أهمية كبيرة للتعاون الدولي من خلال المشاركة في المؤتمرات من الأمم المتحدة لتغيير المناخ مثل استضافة كوب 18 في 2012 في دولة قطر، ودعم الصندوق الأخضر للمناخ لتمويل مشاريع التكيف والحد من تأثيرات المناخ في الدول النامية. على سبيل المثال تساهم دولة قطر في تمويل مشاريع الطاقة المتجددة في الدول الأفريقية، حيث تسهم في إنشاء محطات للطاقة الشمسية في مناطق نائية لا تصلها الكهرباء، مما يساهم في تحسين ظروف المعيشة لهذه المجتمعات. ختاماً، أن التصدي لتغيير المناخ يتطلب نهجاً شاملاً ومنصفاً، حيث نضمن أن تكون الحلول عادلة لجميع الدول، خصوصاً تلك الأكثر تأثراً بتغيير المناخ رغم مسؤوليتها المحدودة عن تسببه. دولة قطر ملتزمة بتعزيز التعاون الدولي وتحقيق العدالة المناخية من خلال حلول مبتكرة، وتؤمن التحديات المناخية لا يمكن معالجتها إلا بالجهود المشتركة لضمان مستقبل مستدام. وشكراً على حسن استماعكم.
Thank you so much, Qatar. That is the spirit, so that we can all speak. So can I have Honorable Somaye Rafi from Iran? Iran?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. تشکر میکنم از مجلس و دولت آذربایجان، اعضای پنلیست، سرکار خانم آکسون و آقای چانگان. رفیعی هستم، اکولوژیست از جمهوری اسلامی ایران، از کشور پهناور ایران که از 11 اقلیم دنیا 9 اقلیم در جمهوری اسلامی ایران واقع هست و وجود داره. ما رنگین کمانی از انواع تنوع محلی و جوامع بومی هستیم که در آرامش و صلح با هم زندگی میکنیم. همه مناطق کشور من از برخورداری‌های مختلف برخوردارن، مثل برخورداری در حوزه بهداشت، درمان، تحصیل، آموزش، جاده، راه و هر چیزی که برای زیرساخت یک کشور نیاز هست و همه عادلانه برخوردارند. برای این موارد کشور من بودجه گذاشته و هزینه کرده. پس مشخصه برای برقراری عدالت نیازمند مکانیزم‌های مالی هستیم، چیزی که باید در اینجا هم بهش حتما بپردازیم، یعنی مکانیزم‌های مالی و نحوه پرداخت‌های مالی. من دیروز همه صحبت‌ها رو گوش کردم در پنل‌های مختلف. صحبت‌ها متفاوت بود اما بعضی جمله‌ها ثابت بود. جملات ثابت چیا بودن؟ میگفتن که باید برای موضوعات اقلیمی بودجه گذاشته بشه. گفته میشد کشورهایی که بیشترین سهم رو دارن در تغییرات اقلیمی و تخریب کره زمین باید سهم خودشون رو پرداخت کنن. ولی میبینید حتی در این اجلاسیه ها این کشورها حضور ندارن. مسئله قابل بحثه و باید راجع بهش صحبت کرد. من دیروز سری هم به منطقه بلوزون زدم به عنوان یک کارشناس و اونجا هم همچنان این قاعده پابرجا بود. هنوز راجع به مکانیزم های مالی و تعهد مالی به رویه روشن و شفافی نرسیدیم. قضیه خیلی ساده است. بر کشورهایی برنامه‌های زیاده خواهانه دارند و این به نظر ما ضد عدالته. یه جمله جالبی مهاتما گاندی داره، میگه زمین برای تأمین نیاز آدم‌ها توان داره ولی به اندازه آز اونها توان نداره. این خیلی نکته مهمیه. علاقه‌مندم به یک مصداق اشاره بکنم که این روزها خیلی میتونم بگم شدت بیشتری پیدا کرده. بحث حمله وحشیانه رژیم اسرائیل علیه مردم مظلوم و سرزمین غزه، فلسطین و لبنان، تخریبی که هیچ کسی در جای جای دنیا از اثرات اون در امان نیست. ماها به عنوان حوزه محیط زیست و تغییرات اقلیمی دور هم جمع شدیم. بی تفاوتی ما حقیقتاً توجیهی نداره. علاقه‌مندم جواب همکارمون رو هم اشاره کنم. همکار محترم که از کشور جزیره‌ای در اجلاس حضور دارید، لطفاً هزینه‌های مربوط به آسیب کشور خودتون رو و همه کشورهای جزیره‌ای رو از کشورها و دولت‌هایی که بالغ بر 200 ساله که از محل انتشار کربن توسعه پیدا کردن طلب کنید. این یک مطالبه جدی است و ما هم شما را همراهی خواهیم کرد. ممنون و متشکرم.
Can I take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Masaru Hiyazaki, Japan. Honorable Masaru from Japan, in less than 2 minutes.
発言の機会をいただきありがとうございます。日本国会の宮崎勝でございます。世界は気候変動、生物多様性の損失、汚染という3つのグローバル危機に直面をしており、持続可能な開発目標の達成が脅かされております。これら3つの危機に対し、持続可能な開発のあらゆる側面において、シナジー効果のあるアプローチによって統合的に対処することが必要と考えます。2022年に生物多様性条約に基づく昆明モントリオール生物多様性枠組みが採択され、2030年ミッションとしてネイチャーポジティブが掲げられました。このミッションの達成に向け、30 by 30等の目標が定められております。日本は近年、里山などの二次的自然環境や都市の緑地などにおいて、これらの維持管理のために必要とされる担い手や資金の不足により劣化が課題となっております。また、30 by 30の達成に向け、こうした課題以外にも、海域での自然環境の保全も重要なテーマとなっております。海に囲まれている日本は、海藻藻場やマングローブ林など多様なブルーカーボン生態系が存在しています。ブルーカーボン生態系は光合成を行う際に CO2 を吸収固定することができることから、気候変動対策の切り札として注目されておりますが、高潮対策や海外侵食対策など適応策の観点からも貢献が期待できます。こうしたブルーカーボン生態系の可能性についてパネリストのご意見をお伺いしたいと思います。最後になりますが、昨日のセッションでの日本の主張を成果文書に盛り込んでいただき大変感謝申し上げます。改めて気候変動が危機的状況にある中で、先進国途上国にかかわらず各国の積極的な協力が必要であることを申し上げます。またこれ以上世界中で地雷の犠牲者が増えないように日本としても引き続き協力してまいります。ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much. Can I have Honorable Nene from DRC? Chair, please. We are encouraging everyone to speak from this
Please,
side.
I want to stay here, please.
Okay, in
because
less
I
than
have-
2 minutes.
Yeah,
thank
2
you.
minutes, please. Merci beaucoup. Je prends la parole ici au nom de la République démocratique du Congo, mon pays, et aussi dans le cadre des réseaux des parlementaires africains sur le changement climatique, dont j'assume la vice-présidence. Je soutiens la proposition et la position de l'Afrique selon lesquelles les parlementaires africains se sont engagés à réduire et à accompagner les gouvernements dans l'élaboration des différents plans, programmes sectoriels pour lutter contre les changements climatiques. Et si je prends l'exemple de la République démocratique du Congo, nous nous sommes engagés, notre pays s'est engagé à tel point que nous avons la loi sur l'environnement. Nous avons révisé et nous sommes dans la réforme est dans le cadre de la RED+, dont nous avons 8 piliers dans l'agriculture, l'énergie, comme les autres l'ont parlé. Mais nous avons constaté avec tout, comme les autres parlementaires ont parlé ici, cette année pour l'Afrique, nous avons vu des démonstrations, des catastrophes, les gens qui se sont déplacés, les inondations, et voire même dans mon pays, dans ma province, Équateur, là où on regorge la plus grande forêt humide au monde, nous avons vu des gens faire des 30 km pour aller chercher de l'eau. Et là, ça doit interpeller tout le monde. Et moi, j'appelle ici, nous tous qui sommes ici et qui sommes les légiférateurs des lois, nous pouvons voir, chacun de nous a un téléphone. Et la République démocratique du Congo, pays solution, comme nous l'avons toujours dit aujourd'hui, nous pouvons donner le mieux au nom de l'Afrique à toute l'humanité. Mais aussi les parlementaires internationaux, nous tous, nous avons la responsabilité. Vous devez pousser aussi vos pays développés pour rentabiliser et mobiliser les fonds. Nous avons plusieurs promesses de fonds pour permettre aux pays de développement d'avoir des ressources qui peuvent leur permettre d'avoir des outils. Mais jusqu'à maintenant, ces fonds n'arrivent pas. Je pense que nous, étant que parlementaires, nous avons des responsabilités. Et les réseaux des parlementaires africains que nous sommes sur les questions des changements climatiques, nous avons aussi besoin de vous, étant que parlementaires, ensemble pour sauver cette planète. Merci beaucoup.
I would like to call upon Honorable Madani Ali Sera from Indonesia.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable chairs, distinguished speakers, delegates, and colleagues, all the parliamentarians. First of all, I would like to say that our support and our heart with our Tonga parliamentarians and people, and every people in the world who are suffering with our climate change. But no matter how fragile our cooperation, we should move forward, and then we have so many opportunities here. Allow me to highlight some data in Indonesia that show how the climate change affects our society. We have 27.5 farmers, which are really having a serious 27.5 million farmers we have suffering because La Nina and El Nino. We have 2.5 fishermen. We have that really suffer because the meteorological disasters are coming up. We have 43.5 million workers. 49% of them is women. That having a huge impact because the price of the rice, the price of the egg is coming up, and it's contribute to what we call it domestic abuse, and some is the percentage rising up on the divorce. Because of that, we really as parliamentarians working hard to adopt sufficient national budget, and our government work hard about this. Collaboration across all sectors, civil society, media, think tank, academics, institutions, and private sectors. But in this forum, we would like to highlight that if we could make a vulnerability map that essential to direct attention to our geographic. Since this one is not a local phenomena, it would be good for us to provide the map that can help us to prevent the disasters. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can I have Honorable Celestine from Madagascar? Honorable Celestine is not around. Madagascar, in less than 2 minutes.
Merci, Madame la modératrice, de m'avoir donné la parole. Permettez-moi de me présenter. Je m'appelle Razafnrama Célestin, député de Madagascar. Et je suis accompagné par 5 députés, délégation de Madagascar, qui sont présents dans cette salle. Et je profite par cette occasion de parler de mon pays et de ses engagements dans la lutte contre le changement climatique. Madagascar, par sa biodiversité unique et sa vulnérabilité face au changement climatique, fait face à des défis majeurs comme les inondations, la sécheresse, l'insécurité alimentaire, doit plus que jamais renforcer ses politiques environnementales. Nous avons pris des engagements tant au niveau national et au niveau international. Pas plus que il y a 3 jours, Madagascar vient de signer un accord de coalition avec 3 autres pays, une coalition dénommée G0 avec la Suriname, le Bhoutan et le Panama. Ces 4 pays sont reconnus par ces efforts dans la diminution des émissions de gaz à effet de serre et la préservation de sa biodiversité. Je rejoins la déclaration de notre ami député de Congo, si je ne me trompe pas tout à l'heure. Madagascar appelle à une solidarité internationale accrue et exprime ses attentes dans le soutien financier issu de mécanismes financiers comme le Fonds vert pour le climat, le Fonds pour l'adaptation, le Fonds pour l'environnement mondial. Et nous voulons aussi la justice climatique, une réparation équitable des responsables avec une reconnaissance des besoins spécifiques des pays vulnérables comme Madagascar. Et nous avançons aussi que nous devons adopter une pratique, une solution pour faciliter le déblocage des fonds qu'on nous a promis chaque année pendant la COP. Ainsi, je veux terminer mon intervention pour ne pas abuser de mon temps. Merci de m'avoir donné la parole.
Okay, thank you very much, Madagascar. Can I have Honorable Monica Batos from Hungary? Hungary? Okay. In less than a minute, we have to conclude this session soon.
Thank you for the floor. Some MPs, my fellow representatives, mentioned that his or her country affected by the negative impacts of climate change, and unfortunately my country, Hungary, as a relatively small landlocked country, is in the same situation, and we have to find solutions from the challenges. I would like to share with you 2 small good practices what we found. One is related to the knowledge and the other is related to the help of vulnerable sectors. I'm an engineer of nature conservation and rural development, but I face every day with the limits of my knowledge, and to solve the problems what we face with, we have to educate ourselves every day. MPs and everybody educate ourselves and share the examples and the data and experiences. And the Hungarian government at the beginning of 2020 adopted a report on the scientific assessment of the possible effects of climate change on the Carpathian Basin. And this is a purpose to enable the government to make the decision necessary due to climate change based on scientific information. On the one hand, the report includes the results of the climate models predicted for the Carpathian basins, and on the other hand, the vulnerability of certain sectors, and contains necessary steps to answer these challenges. The other small good practice was in the hand of the National Assembly. We wanted to give a safe environment for agricultural farmers, and we adopted a package of producer protection laws which help farmers to be less vulnerable to buyers, because producers, farmers have to bear the entire risk of the operation of the product line, and we want to change this situation, and we made a package of producer protection laws. So these are small examples, but maybe can useful for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I have our last speaker, who is going to be Honorable Ramid Namazov from Azerbaijan?
Thank you. I'm here. I'll try to quickly read my comments, given your recommendation. Our session is addressing climate vulnerability and comprehensive and equitable approach to climate action. When I read the concept note of this panel, I saw about the small islands, developing states, but I guess no one touched upon this issue. I would like to briefly comment on this, and I'll have a question to our esteemed panelists. As you know, on the third day of COP29, we had a leaders summit on small island developing states on climate change, and we had an opportunity to listen the leaders of these islands and their concerns about the existential threats that the climate change poses to their islands. At the same time, it's also important to acknowledge that some small states, small islands, are grappling with the legacy of colonialism. One such example is French Polynesia, which has been directly affected by 193 nuclear weapon tests between 1966 and 1996. This test resulted in severe soil and water contamination, with radiation persisting in the ecosystem and impacting marine and terrestrial life. The health of local community is also severely compromised, with reports elevated cancer rates and radiation-related illnesses. And the biodiversity also suffered, we know. So, and we are aware that the fact the colonization process in similar territories has stalled, leaving them without the necessary sovereignty to implement sustainable climate strategies. So my question is to the panel, what role should the International Parliament Organization assume in addressing these issues? And given the urgency of these matters, don't you think it's time to initiate certain actions regarding small islands at the parliamentary level? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azerbaijan. Can we all applaud ourselves for that session? But now I would like to take the ball back to our panelists, because I know there could be more speakers. but we are limited with time, and I hope that will be given a priority in the next session. So in less than a minute each to the panelists, any comment, anything you want to clarify in less than a minute so that we can conclude. I will start with Ms. Bigel.
Thank you very much. Maybe I start with the very last comment by the representative of Azerbaijan. And I would say that if you look at the results of the conference in Antigua and Barbuda very recently, you see that the very specific issues that relate to small island developing states are extremely urgent, and I hope they will be reflected in the outcome of this conference. Of course, you will expect me as IDLO to say that fair laws and institutions to implement them are key for the change, but I would also like to echo what my three panelists all said about holistic approaches, absolutely essential, and approaches that really take into account the lived experience of people wherever they are, and that also take into account particularly the concerns of the most vulnerable. And the last thing I would say in my 1 minute, I hope, is that it is essential that parliamentarians talk to their governments and make certain that their representatives to this conference get these major issues into the outcome documents, and particularly the financing, because it is very clear that those who are suffering the most are those that have done the least to contribute to the current situation, and so they really need that financing and that collective solidarity. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Ms. Bigel. I would like to take the ball back to Mr. Porter.
Thank you very much. I think my one key takeaway from all the comments that were made from the floor is that there's a shared body of interest and concern in vulnerability and climate issues. And I think the more work that parliamentarians from different countries can do together, to come together from around the world to share their knowledge, learning and understanding and change that, use that for action, I think that would be success. Thank you.
So much, Porter. I would like to invite Honorable Adomahu Jeremy. Final remarks.
Merci, Madame la modératrice. Je pense que nous ne devons pas être pessimistes vis-à-vis des situations que nous vivons dans nos différents pays suite au changement climatique. Nous devons continuer le processus à travailler et surtout sensibiliser, surtout nos parlementaires, sensibiliser nos collègues parlementaires des pays grands pollueurs afin que leurs gouvernements respectifs soient interpellés sur les financements structurants qu'ils doivent apporter aux pays en voie de développement pour la justice climatique. C'est ça qu'il faut. Nous polluons moins, mais nous subissons davantage les conséquences des changements climatiques. Il faut que ceux qui polluent plus contribuent pour nous aider à sortir nos pays du sous-développement. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Honorable Jeremy. May I now invite Catherine Wong for your final remarks.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you to all of the parliamentarians today for the really interesting comments. With regards to the last one and the impacts on small island developing states, I think it's really important to think about the impacts of sea level rise on SIDS, right? They're going to change baselines in terms of exclusive economic zones. So that will impact fisheries. We know that climate change is going to also, and it's already actually having an effect on fish migration patterns. So questions of illegal fisheries, I think, are really important here, given that our fishery resources are also being affected and negatively affected by climate change. So blue economies and blue economy responses also really need to be taken into account. A second point that we need to think about in terms of legislation, in terms of international law and national law as well, is how we are protecting people on the move. They may have been displaced by climate, they may have been displaced by conflict, but they also will have the least access to adaptation, to energy, and at the moment they don't enjoy the same protections as those that are displaced by conflict do. So they don't have the same protections as refugees. And with increasing impacts of climate on displacement, we really need to find solutions. There's the Kampala Declaration, which was recognized by the Horn of Africa countries and also African Union Commission. So there are some interesting points of reference in different places, but still there's not a consistent approach to climate displacement. So that would just be a second point to finish up on. Thanks so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Catherine Wong. Can we give a big applause to our panelists and also to ourselves? We've done a great job. And I would like to think that this has been a meaningful discussion on the importance of addressing climate vulnerability in a comprehensive and equitable manner. We hope that these exchanges inspire new parliamentary actions to protect vulnerable communities and promote climate justice. I would have loved to continue chairing because it's very interesting to be in front here. But this comes to the end of our session 4, and I hope you have enjoyed my moderation. Thank you very much. And I just want to make an announcement that the Africa Parliamentarians Caucus will be there tomorrow. I'm the Secretary General of that caucus, and we will be meeting at the Africa Pavilion at 3 to 4:30 at the Blue Zone. Please, honorable members from the Africa Caucus, join us. You're all invited. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana. Thank you very much. Enjoy the stay here. Thank you.
My Parliament, my planet. My name is Mira Al-Swedi, and I am a member of Parliament in the United Arab Emirates Federal National Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will
The
continue.
United Arab Emirates is one of the countries that has been addressing climate change very significantly. And as such, we will be hosting COP28 in 2023 next year. As a government, as Parliament members, and even as individuals, we really
Ladies
do
and
take
gentlemen, we
climate
will
change
continue. Please
initiatives
take your
to
seats.
heart. For example, the Federal National Council has put together an e-Parliament, which is a portal where members of Parliament are able to review legislation and different topics that we are working on from the day that we receive it all the way up until it goes for approval to the Cabinet of Ministers. Some other initiatives that we are also looking at is going completely paperless, reducing the use of plastic, purchasing electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, and moving into a new LEED certified building that is very energy efficient and has smart solutions put in place.
Dear participants, we are beginning for our session 5 dedicated to the harnessing technology to tackle climate change and ensuring fair access. And the moderator of the session is Mr. Fariz Ismailzadeh, member of the Milli Meclis of the Republic of Azerbaijan. We will start shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm kindly asking everyone to take their seats. We are continue our event with the session 5. Xanımlar və cənablar, yerlərinizi almağınızı xahiş edirik və hazırda 5-ci sessiyamız başlayır. Zəhmət olmasa səhnəni tərk edin. Dear panelists, I will kindly ask you to leave the stage because we have to start for our session 5. I would like to remind that we are starting for our session 5 dedicated to harnessing technology to tackle climate change and ensuring fair access. And the moderator of the session is Mr. Fariz Ismailzadeh, member of the Milli Meclis of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Ladies and gentlemen, we are kindly asking you to take your seats. Xanımlar və cənablar, yerlərinizi almağınızı xahiş edirik. Thank you for understanding. Mr. Farzis Manzada, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, distinguished members of parliament. Welcome to session number 5. We will be discussing the role of technology, especially with the focus on artificial intelligence, and how we can use technology and innovation in the work of parliament, in the work of legislation, and how we can use technology to improve the fight against climate change. Of course, when we speak about technology, we also need to mention that any technology needs to be accessible to all countries, all societies, that technology needs to be used in a responsible manner, and also technology and innovation needs to be inclusive, used in an inclusive manner. So I would like to thank all the participants of the 5th panel, and we have 3 wonderful speakers representing different countries and different organizations. And after they make their initial remarks, we will have a chance for question and answer and comments from the audience. First, it is my great honor to introduce and give the floor to Dr. Michal Nachmani. She is the founder and CEO of an NGO called Climate Policy Radar. Dr. Nachmani, the floor is yours.
Salam alaikum, salam alaikum, bonjour, buenos dias, hello, good morning, all the things. It's my great pleasure to be here with you. This session is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be sharing my opinions. I'm going to be giving you some very practical tools you can take and go home with and make better laws and hold your governments to account and pass budgets and talk to each other, and hopefully in a little more informed way than many of you are currently able to do. And we'll talk about the sprinkle of the magic of artificial intelligence that we can put on top of that, and we will think about how to use that force responsibly and use it for good. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, maybe it's useful to ask, what is intelligence? All of you are very intelligent people, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here. Intelligence is the ability to distill and assess information, to decide what is relevant, what is not, what is trustworthy, what is not, and to process it to make an informed decision. So artificial intelligence is used today to detect. You can do facial recognition. You can detect methane leaks with satellite technology. To predict, when you go on your streaming service and it tells you this is the show that you want to watch next, or to predict what will be the energy trajectory if we take one policy or another. To optimize, for example, how to go from place A to place B in the shortest way, or how to load grids with renewables in the most optimized way to increase efficiency, and to simulate, to ask how, like video games, but can we do a video game of our reality and ask, how do we simulate different paths of action? How is that relevant to parliamentarians? All of your decision makings have those things. You need to identify the relevant information, to simulate, to predict, and to make optimized decisions. Again, to make better policy, to hold policymakers to account, to track action, and to do risk analysis. Where is riskier and how can we reduce that? But then you're faced with reading all of that. This says it's in there somewhere because you have to read a lot of documents, and the policy documents and the policy briefings that you are reading are very long. They are in multiple languages. Look at how difficult it is for you sometimes to speak to each other and learn from each other, and even identify what are the relevant sources of information and the reliable sources of information that you can use in order to make your decisions. And when you finally found those, you actually need to read and process them. I've been working with parliamentarians for about 15 years now. I know how busy you all are. I also know that in your days, you are busy thinking about domestic violence, agriculture, transportation, energy. You are busy with your constituencies. You're busy with national, with regional, and with international agendas. When do you have time to read and process all of this information? So what happens when we don't have time? We stay with what we have. And that is not good enough. And we're all sitting in this room talking about the need to reduce greenhouse gases, to increase resilience, to help our communities, to pay for loss and damage for the things that we cannot and we're not will be able to retrieve. And that is simply not good enough. But parliamentarians are good at getting together and learning from each other. And what I want to show you is several tools that we have developed in collaboration with parliamentarians with whom we have been working since 2009 at the London School of Economics, with GLOBE, with the IPU, with Climate Parliament, with many organizations that you are part of, in order to do better. These are photos from the last, 12, 13 years of parliamentarian gatherings. So I represent an organization that I founded. It's called Climate Policy Radar. It's a not-for-profit organization based in London. And we're on a mission to map and analyze and democratize access to all of this data so you can very quickly identify what is needed in order for you to make decisions. So we have taken all of the national climate laws and policies from every single national government. All of yours are there. There's about 6,000 laws, policies, strategies, action plans, NDCs, NAPs, biennial transparency reports, everything. That's about 500,000 pages of documents in many languages, or about 4.5 paragraphs. And what do? You go on our free app, there will be a barcode at the end. Let's say that I'm interested in promoting green hydrogen. I type green hydrogen. I get all of the laws and policies and NDCs that mention green hydrogen. If I click on it, I see that in Portugal's 2020 policy, in page 59 and 48, it says something about that. And I can actually find it. Now, I don't know if you can read, but this is in Portuguese. It's auto-translated. So we've just looked through 500,000 pages and be able to find very, very targeted and pinpointed information about whatever topic you are looking at. We've worked together with the UNFCCC to take all of the documents, all of the submissions to the global stocktake that was 1.5 years ago, which is both by parties and by non-party stakeholders, and do the same thing. But here we did something more. Instead of control find renewables in the document, we say, what do we mean when we say renewables? And you can see here that we find renewable power and bagasse and wind farms and renewable energy because we have trained models to say, when people working on climate say renewables, what do they mean? When people say transport, what do they mean? Trains, cars, planes, automobiles, infrastructure, roads. When people say fossil fuels, when people say impacted groups, or when people say LDCs, right? This is not a single word, it's a whole universe. What do we mean? And be able to find that quickly. And of course, anyone who's been around in the last couple of years, and that will be on that. And of course, we need responsible generative AI, because really what you want to do is ask your ChatGPT, can you tell me what Tonga did on rising sea levels? But we want a responsible answer for that, because ChatGPT will not give you the responsible answer. Who knows what information sources it will pick on? Who knows if it will tell you the truth? So we develop responsible AI solutions. What is responsible? When you get the answer, you can see immediately the original text that shows you where the answer came from. So you can check for yourself and be certain that the documents are there and that the documents are right and that they say what they say. And we do this in an open source and open access way, so you can check for yourself, so researchers globally can check that there is no bias in the models. More than that, it means that the access for these, that is free, of course, for all, means that anyone doesn't have to be behind paywalls in order to do that. Just this week on Finance Day at COP, we released the first collaboration between the 4 multilateral climate funds, the GCF, GEF, CIF, and the Adaptation Fund. It is the first time they're doing something together. any of you who have applied for funding from either of those funds know that it's a mess to find anything in there. How do you know if projects in there were funded? How do we know what is the guidance of that? So we have built them the ability to find everything in one place, taking the documents from all the 4 funds together, putting them all in one place. If I search for empowering women, I will be able to find that in Pakistan's distributed solar project, on page 18, there is reference to empowering women. What is the chance that we would have known to find that in there? So now it is there, launched and free. I will conclude in talking about the risks of careless use of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is something that can be used for good and something that can be used very precariously. When we use a model, whatever we teach it, that's what it will tell us. If we only teach it in English, it won't know how to deal very well with Punjabi. If we teach it only things from the global north, it won't tell us very well how to deal with the global south. So we need to be very careful in how we do that. And we need a lot of education. And all of you and all of your colleagues, it is incredibly important that we do capacity building and skill building so we know what to look out for. So we know not just to buy anything and know how to check and know how to ask how responsible is this. Of course, AI risks invasion of privacy and also information disorders. So you all know misinformation and disinformation, but omission is very important. What don't you know that you don't know? This is incredibly important for politics. When people vote in an election and they get only certain types of information and don't get other types of information, then they don't know what they don't know. And that's a very problematic thing. Being able to know that and being able to train the models so they don't limit the information that you're privy to is important. In the space that we're at, climate, we also, of course, care about nature and about human health and about human rights and about many other topics. How do we make sure that we don't build those silos and bring everything together? That is one of the important things. There's obviously safety and security risks. If you give an AI system the ability to make decisions, for example, to decide if the grid is going to operate on gas or on renewables, and it makes a mistake, you may be stuck without power. So being able to develop human oversight over these systems is incredibly important. And of course, AI systems take a lot of resources. They contribute to data center energy consumption. Although data centers do a lot of other things, it's very important. Not all of the energy and emissions coming from data centers is for AI. They strain the water, they strain the power grid, and of course, people who train the AI models often live in the global south and are paid very little in order to help that, where the profits go to the big corporates. So all of these things need to be addressed, and parliaments have a role to play in understanding how this transformative technology both can be used in order to do incredible things on climate change and also to avoid the risks. I'm going to come back to this barcode in 1 second, but I will just tell you that this week we launched a 350-page report with incredible authors, including former chair of the IPCC, mapping all of the ways that artificial intelligence can help climate change. There are chapters there on every single sector, transport and buildings, global south and global north, including some cross-cutting themes, and a very special chapter that I was happy to contribute to on the role of governments and parliaments in regulating AI for climate. I won't give you these examples because I think we're running out of time. I'll put the barcode on so you can scan it to use our tools. I'm here around later if you want to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nahmani, for this presentation. Indeed, we are very interested in these new ways to use technology, especially artificial intelligence, to better search for data, for better integrate data, to coordinate activities of different parliaments, to search for laws. So this is very helpful, very helpful. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that this barcode that you left us, or QR code, will be used by the participants. Next, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Tatiana Esteves. She is the founder and CEO of a startup called Permalution. As we talked about technology, of course, The role of startups, the role of innovators is important in this issue. So Ms. Esteves, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, hello. Wonderful, thank you. Hello, and dear honorable members of parliament and distinguished guests. My name is Tatiana Esteves. I am the founder, CEO of Permalution. We're a Canadian-based startup that is working on technology for cloud and fog water collection. So, as many of you may know, by 2030, 2/3 of the world will not have enough water to cover their needs. There's 14 countries already under extreme drought category. And just for reference, there are more people in the world dying because of water-related causes and sanitation than war. So as rain is considered vertical precipitation, clouds and fog are considered horizontal precipitation, and we can collect up to 3 times more water than with rain. By definition, fog and clouds are made of tiny particles of water that are suspended in the air, and we're on a mission to introduce this new water source through our world-class technology comprising 3 units. The first unit is called the Fog Atlas. This is an algorithm or predictive model that pinpoints where the equation of clouds or fog meet in a region for us to collect it as a water source. Once we pinpoint these hotspots or fog spots in a region, we set up the second unit of technology called the Water Radar. This is a set of meteorological sensors conceived to analyze fog and clouds as a water source, providing the estimated yields we can collect, the water quality, and we build a cost-benefit analysis for each project. For then installing the third unit of technology, which is this big hardware we call the fog collectors, which comprises these huge membranes with hydrophilic properties that once the fog or the cloud touches this membrane, it forces to turn into liquid, providing on average from 150 to 400 liters of water per unit of 20 square meters, and now our industrial sizes providing from 700 up to 2,000 liters of water per day per unit of 100 square meters. Unlike rain, if we don't collect cloud and fog, they go back into the atmosphere through temperature change and therefore is lost from the local hydric cycle. Usually we would have conifers, redwoods, sequoias, these trees that are so tall because they irrigate on fog and clouds, that would reintroduce this water source into the hydric cycle. Nowadays, we have less than 5% of the tree masses that can do this job. So we are doing biomimicry, or mimicking what nature would be doing to introduce this water source in regions that are completely remote. Because our technology does not require energy to run, we can go into remote regions. And because we don't need relative humidity, we can go into the driest places on Earth where it doesn't rain even 1 drop of rain per year. This is one of the renders of the latest projects we are doing in the Middle East. And because of IP and patent issues, I cannot put the actual pictures, but for you to have an idea of how it works. We usually, once the water is collected, we apply it for projects in conservation, wildfire mitigation, climate change observation, agriculture, and many other applications depending on the needs. We have partners for filtration systems, artificial water masses, irrigation systems, and more. Our strong suit is that we have the most unique database to understand fog and clouds as a water source. Nowadays, fog and clouds are being measured in airports for visibility and mobility reasons, but not to be understood as a water source. We're using over 6 different data sources to feed our algorithm. 25% of the world has already been mapped for the best locations for fog and cloud water collection spots. And we are still mapping the rest of the world, finding very interesting hotspots that we didn't think, and even in the countries, they didn't know they could have this type of water sources. The sky has 37.5 billion gallons of water that we can tap into. We have applied already our technology for community water access, conservation, wildfire mitigation, private ESG agendas of private companies, and also climate change observation, given clouds and fog are a very strong indicator to understand climate change. We are also partnering with applications for community water access, and next year we're starting a new application, still tapping into floating water, but for industrial steam recycling, starting with data centers, and then moving into textile, breweries, food processing, nuclear, and more. We are more affordable than desalination plants and more sustainable. We are more efficient than rain, and we're safer than groundwater extraction. We are mainly operating in Middle East, Latin America, and now North America as well. And we're in conversation for projects in Africa and Asia, especially the countries that are in need of these solutions the most. Because we're mapping the best places in the world for our solutions, we're also mapping the best partners that can apply and use and help us out to implement our solutions where they need it most. Sorry, I'm gonna stay back on this one for a little bit. We're very strong on impact metric measurement, greenhouse reduction metrics as well, as we're pushing for that calculations from our conservation, wildfire mitigation, and water access projects. We got a shout out at Google last year from World Water Week as one of their favorite startups for sustainable development. We were chosen as one of the top 5 women in sustainability at Climate Week a few months ago, 1.5 months ago, and as a World CEO Water Champion by the World Bank last year. So I invite you all to join us and be part of a new substantial solution that is tackling the world's current water access and climate adaptation challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tatiana Esteves. This is a very, very interesting startup and definitely very useful for our planet to conserve the water, to use wisely the, let's say, resources of the nature. So I hope that the participants will log into your website and learn more about it. Last but not least, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Member of Parliament from United Arab Emirates, Federal National Council, Ms. Mira Al-Suwaidi. She will make a presentation from the experience of UAE. Please, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for having me on this panel. Distinguished fellow parliamentarians and esteemed colleagues. My name is Mira Al-Suwaidi and I'm a member of parliament from the United Arab Emirates. And I'm the only MP, I believe, on this panel. So I hope I can give a different viewpoint of how members of parliament can work with startups and different organizations in order to improve our policies, especially when it comes to climate change and using technology in that front. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to join this discussion, particularly focusing on how we can advance technologies to most vulnerable to climate impacts. This challenge that we're facing today lies at the heart of our global response to climate change, and I'm honored to share with you today some of the insights from our experience in the United Arab Emirates. So maybe let me start by talking a little bit about our technology-driven climate action journey in the United Arab Emirates. We have gone under, I would say, a remarkable transformation. We were a country that was 100% dependent on hydrocarbons, so we are a hydrocarbon-based economy, to today being a country that is less than 30% dependent on hydrocarbons, given that we're still a hydrocarbon producer. And we have become a global leader in clean technology and climate innovation. We believe that harnessing technology is a powerful tool and it is a catalyst for positive environmental change. Now, let me talk to you about some of the examples and things that we have done in the United Arab Emirates. How many people here in the audience has heard about Masdar? Has anyone here heard about Masdar? Great. Masdar is one of the largest renewable energy companies, and it is a green hydrogen leader, and it has placed the UAE at the forefront of energy transition. It has become a pioneer in the clean energy sector and an enabler for the UAE's vision and a global leader in sustainability. Now, why do I say global leader? Masdar today has developed projects in over 40 countries, not only in the UAE, and it over 6 continents, and it has a combined capacity of more than 31 gigawatts today, and a lot in the pipeline as well. Another initiative that we have worked on in the United Arab Emirates, given that we're in the UAE and it's very sunny, solar makes sense, right? So we have the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park. It is one of the largest solar parks in the world, and it is central to our goal of producing 50% of our power from clean energy sources by 2050. This park really demonstrates the ambition of the UAE in terms of renewable energy, and it shows us how we can reshape energy landscape, and even if we do have fossil fuels, we can still reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. Another initiative that we're working on is carbon capture and storage, CCS. The UAE is a leader in the Middle East in carbon capture technology, and we have a project called the Riyadh project. This really helps us to reduce industrial emissions through carbon capture. It is one of our cornerstone projects in our emission reducing strategy, and it allows us to demonstrate that CCS can be integrated within different industrial processes. Now, what about AI? My fellow panelist, Dr. Rahmani, spoke about policy radar and responsive generative AI. Artificial intelligence and IoT, the Internet of Things, is a crucial strategy that the UAE has taken in energy management. We employ artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things across different sectors like energy and transport. And the main reason is because we want to enhance efficiency, reduce waste, optimize resource usage. And these different innovations allow us to enable data-driven decision-making and improve our environmental outcomes. Why do we do that? Maybe because we are a small nation and we're a very young nation. More than 60% of the people in the UAE are under the age of 30. So we really need to focus on AI and how we can have data-driven decision-making to improve our processes. So now that we've spoken about this and we've spoken about what the UAE has done within the UAE and abroad, what have we done technologically in order to help bridge the technology divide that is in place today? We believe that equitable access to climate technology is essential for a just global response to climate change. And we have committed to sharing knowledge and resources to support other nations' climate ambitions. And maybe there is a long list, but let me just name 3. The first one is the UAE Pacific Partnership Fund. This fund supports climate resilience across 11 Pacific Island nations to help implement solar, wind, and desalination projects tailored to their specific needs. The second example I'd like to mention today is the 50 billion climate finance commitment that we pledged with a focus on technology transfer to developing nations, helping to implement and sustain climate solutions. As well, if you remember during COP29 last year, the UAE announced a $30 billion pledge and commitment to the newly launched catalytic climate vehicle called Altera, which will drive forward different international efforts to create a fairer climate finance system with an emphasis on improving access to funding for the Global South. The third example that I'd like to highlight are African partnerships. Through solar and wind technology deployment, we are bringing clean energy to remote communities in Africa. These partnerships exemplify our dedication to providing equitable access to renewable resources. So now that I've spoken to you about the UAE and how we focus on ensuring that we're bridging the technology divide and playing our role as a global citizen, what are different ways that we can ensure successful technology transfer? And I think there are 3 important elements, and we mostly all know that. Localization, capacity building, and innovative financing. Now, what do I mean when I say localization? Technologies need to be adapted for local context, accounting for different community needs and conditions. We cannot work on something if you cannot adopt and implement it in your local communities. So that, for me, is extremely important. Capacity building. Empowering local expertise is crucial. There is no point of us building and participating in different projects worldwide if then this technology cannot be transferred and there is no local capacity to take this forward. So we invest heavily in different training programs and knowledge-sharing initiatives to ensure that communities are enabled to independently manage and sustain climate solutions. And innovative financing, we always in the United Arab Emirates promote creative funding mechanisms to make climate technology accessible. Why can't we look at different alternative financing models and try to cater to the needs of different developing nations while holding them accountable? Accountability is key. So putting aside our role as the UAE, today we're here as members of parliament. And we have an important role as MPs to play. We have a responsibility in creating legislative frameworks that support technology adoption and equitable access. So some of the legislative frameworks that we must enact through policies are ways that we can promote clean technology, facilitate technology transfer, and encourage responsible usage. Regulatory frameworks that we put in place are key to accelerating climate action while balancing the different IP laws and rights. Oversight and accountability. Effective climate action requires a rigorous oversight. It is our duty to monitor the different programs implemented, assess the effectiveness of partnerships, and ensure transparency in climate finance. Budget allocation. We approve budgets. So let's prioritize climate research and development, support international cooperation, and invest in capacity building. Last year during COP29 in our outcome document, we mentioned that green budgeting is also very important, and we need to start to instill this discipline into our budgeting practices. Inter-Parliamentary cooperation. The IPU is the best place for us to do this. We need to share best practices and establish different working groups where we can strengthen our collective impact on climate action. Collaborative frameworks are essential to overcoming global challenges. There are so many different initiatives that we have worked on together in the IPU. One really good initiative is My Parliament, My Planet, and so many different initiatives and toolkits that we have access to. Let's make use of them. As I conclude, I'd like to say that our success in the United Arab Emirates and as members of parliament in addressing climate change will not be measured solely by technological sophistication, but by our commitment to making these advancements accessible to all. We have a duty to enact policies that support both innovation and equity, ensuring that the benefits of climate technology extend to every corner of the globe. Let us work together across different borders and sectors, both public and private, to harness the power of technology responsibly and inclusively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member of Parliament. Thank you for your remarks. And you mentioned about Masdar. I must say that also in Azerbaijan, we have a very large contract with Masdar to produce green energy, so we are very happy about this collaboration. I'm also your colleague, I'm member of parliament in Azerbaijan, and I must say that in our parliament we also focus a lot on such initiatives. For example, last week we adopted a couple new laws. One is to free from tariffs, custom tariffs and duties, all green technology that is imported into Azerbaijan. So they are free from custom tariffs for a 5-year period. Also, we are supporting startups. We are relieving startups from taxation. And also last week we adopted a new law about prohibiting industrial plants and factories in tourism zones and in green areas or nature areas. So we are collaborating on these issues as well. Thank you, dear panelists, for your remarks. Maybe I will give the floor to the audience to ask questions or maybe to make interventions. First, I have here a representative from South Africa, Mr. Cedric Frolik. Please, the floor is yours.
No, good morning, moderator, and to the excellent panelists. I think you really deserve another round of applause for the excellent inputs that you have made. It's good to come to COP29 conferences when you mix with parliamentarians and you hear words such as free transfer of technology, technology sharing, open source. And that is what we expect from parliaments, but not only from parliaments, from the governments of the world as well. For instance, in South Africa, the Climate Change Act was enacted in July 2024, a few months ago. And it is designed to define, manage, monitor, and implement our response to climate change. And technology will be at the bottom of it. When we report, we'll have to use technology. But due to the huge inequalities that we have in the country, and also in Africa as a whole, you do find that we run the risk when we transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy, that there is a risk that you can leave people behind. And unfortunately, when it comes to technology, it impacts directly on the poorer people, those living in rural areas, those who are not covered by cell phone networks, those who don't have access to the early warning systems that are in place. They're the warning systems for fires emanating from climate-induced disasters and so forth. So the question is that we need to address as legislators is, what are we going to do with this information that becomes available? How are we going to customize and localize it in our own laws and in our own regulations? But at the bottom of it is the issue of finance that the representative from the UAE mentioned. And this COP must deal decisively with upscaling the finance to allow all countries who are not financially able to do so to get access to the necessary funding to build their own capacities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to give the chance to the panelists to respond at the end as a wrap-up. Next, I would like to give the floor to Miss Manuela Tender from Portugal. Is she here? Are you here? Okay, the floor is yours.
Merci. Monsieur le Président, je vous salue et à tous les collègues députés des différents pays. Je félicite les interlocuteurs qu'aujourd'hui et hier nous ont apporté d'intéressantes contributions à propos de ce problème. Au Portugal, nous partageons la volonté, la détermination et le compromis de contribuer aux efforts mondiaux pour réduire les émissions et construire un avenir soutenable. Les parlements, en tant qu'agents définisseurs des politiques publiques à travers ces diplômes, jouent un rôle fondamental dans cet engagement collectif. Hier a été suffisamment souligné le défi d'améliorer la collaboration des parlements avec les autorités locales pour que les lois et les diplômes approuvés aient en considération les réalités diverses des différents pays et dans chaque pays des différentes régions. Il faut évaluer les conditions pour une efficace implémentation des politiques. Mais il faut aussi renforcer la collaboration avec les gouvernements pour assurer l'alignement des politiques et des options prioritaires. Les changements climatiques menacent nos modes de vie, l'agriculture et d'autres activités essentielles, et menacent surtout les plus pauvres, les plus vulnérables. Donc, il faut agir, il faut prendre des mesures, renforcer la formation et la sensibilisation des citoyens pour que chacun puisse aussi faire leur part. Mais il faut aussi analyser l'impact sur les économies mondiales et sur la vie des citoyens. Les parlements et les gouvernements doivent faire attention aux impacts des changements climatiques et des politiques publiques sur la vie des citoyens et leur accès à des produits essentiels et à une habitation digne. L'investissement dans les domaines de la science et de la technologie est essentiel car elle joue un rôle fondamental dans ce domaine. Il faut garantir l'accès de tous les pays et de toutes les régions à l'innovation et à la technologie pour faire face à ces nouveaux défis et menaces qui nous convoquent à tous. La collaboration de la science et de la technologie est aujourd'hui essentielle, soit dans les domaines de la connaissance ou de la perception des problèmes, soit dans les domaines de la conception des solutions efficaces ou dans le domaine de l'évaluation de l'implémentation des politiques publiques et de leurs impacts. Et aussi, ils sont très importantes pour la redéfinition de ces mêmes politiques. Les parlements, les gouvernements, les autorités locales doivent donc valoriser la science et la technologie. À l'aide de la science et de la technologie, on sera capable de supérer les défis qui nous convoquent à tous. Merci.
Thank you very much. We have 4 more interventions. I would like to ask each intervention to be 2 minutes, as in the previous panel. So next, we have a representative from our neighboring country, Iran, Mr. Mostafa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow parliamentarians, distinguished speakers, the announcement of this session stated that this session will explore the role of technology.
Put microphone close, please. Yeah, hold the microphone close.
Close, okay. Thank you so much, Mr. President. The role of technology indeed will focus on how parliaments can ensure technologies are used in a safe, responsible and inclusive manner. I would like to draw attention of the special role of the circular bioeconomy in reducing greenhouse gases emissions. I have 5 remarks. First, the greenhouse gases absorption potential of forest and soil is unused. In particular, soils should be enriched with humus content, which is a deposit of carbon. Each 1% of humus in the soil allows for the retention of approximately 160-180 cubic meter of water on the area of 1 hectare available for cultivated plants. Second, the content of organic matter in the soil is increased by use on effective microorganisms that counteract the oxidation process of organic matter in the soil and thus greenhouse gases emissions, improve the quality of produced plants, and allow for the reducing of use of fertilizers chemicals. Third, microorganisms allow the fermentation of sustainable waste biomass from agriculture, municipal biowaste, and food waste to produce biogas. Biogas in climate policy is a zero-emission gas and at the same time a good energy store. At this conference, I observed many presentations are devoted to bioenergy. Biogas production from agriculture waste, especially from animal production, reduce the carbon footprint too. Fourth, bioeconomic strategies have been implemented by countries with a high level of development, in particular in the field of sustainable use of renewable natural raw materials in accordance with the added value pyramid. And fifth, the use of biotechnology, microorganisms in the sustainable use of natural resources is, in my opinion, next to artificial intelligence, one of the most effective instruments in development of climate action. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have 2 more interventions. I will try to ask them to keep it in 2 minutes. Representative from Thailand, Mr. Kyachai Maitriwong. Please, the floor is yours.
Dear Mr. President, panelists, participants, my name is Senator Kyachai from Thai Parliament. I would like to share you shortly about our requirement of technologies related to the climate action, both for mitigation and adaptation. As you you may know, Thailand 26 to be carbon neutrality in 2050, as well as adaptation plan. Thailand is one of the most vulnerable countries, so we need some collaborating inside the country as well as international support. The technology that we address are as follows. The number one, we need the forecasting system to have early warnings for our agriculture, our farmer, and most vulnerable area in Thailand. So we need AI. Maybe AI is one of the solutions to make a correctly for forecasting technologies. Extreme weather in Thailand, we faced a lot of problem on the flooding. The second thing, now we are in the process to align the corporate to have an issue on the carbon footprint. So we need a worldwide system to account more accurate, standardized, cheap cost, and reliable system allow the country. So we like to discuss if we can share and collaboration. The thirdly, we also is one of the country that we develop the carbon credit platform, especially for Article 6.2 and Article 6.4. So we need registry development, especially for the project bed. The project that we very sensitive is a danger-based solution. It's very expensive to the certify. So if we can use AI or other technology to help each other, we can help. Lastly, we just open our carbon market exchange. So maybe AI and blockchain we can utilize. So that Thailand, we open for discussion, and we need technology support from my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience from Thailand and how artificial intelligence can be useful in your situations when you have extreme weather situations. Last comment will come from representative of Algeria, Mr. Mustafa Jebani. Please, the floor is yours.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. بسم الله والحمد لله. الاسم جبانة مصطفى، عضو مجلس الأمة عن دولة الجزائر. السيدات والسادة الكرام، ملخص مداخلتي حول الاستفادة من التكنولوجيا في التصدي للتغيرات المناخية. السيدات والسادة الكرام، التكنولوجيا اليوم تعد أداة رئيسية في التصدي للتغيرات المناخية. في الجزائر تبنت تقنيات مثل السقي الذكي التي تستخدم الذكاء الاصطناعي لتوفير المياه والطاقة وتقليل التكاليف وزيادة الكفاءة الزراعية، ما ساهم في دعم استدامة القطاع الزراعي. السيدات والسادة الكرام، على مستوى أوسع يستخدم الذكاء الاصطناعي لتحليل بيانات المناخ وتوقع ظواهر متطرفة مثل الجفاف والفيضانات، ما يساعد في اتخاذ تدابير استباقية، كما تساهم أجهزة الاستشعار الذكية في تحسين إدارة المياه ومراقبة صحة الغابات، مما يدعم مواجهة التصحر. رغم هذه الجهود توجه الدول النامية تحديات مثل نقص البنية التحتية، ضعف التمويل، وقلة الكوادر المؤهلة، ما يستدعي دعما دوليا لتطوير الحلول التكنولوجية ونقل الخبرات. السيدات والسادة، تساؤلاتنا اليوم ونحن موجودون في دولة أذربيجان، كيف يمكن ضمان العدالة والوصول إلى تكنولوجيا بين الدول؟ ما هو الدور المنتظر من الدول المتقدمة لتقديم الدعم المالي والتقني للدول النامية. كيف يمكن تحسين التعاون الإقليمي لمواجهة هذه التحديات؟ التكنولوجيا هي حليف أقوى لمواجهة تغيير المناخ، ولكن نجاحها يتطلب تضافر الجهود الدولة لتحقيق العدالة المناخية والتنمية المستدامة. شكرا لكم.
Thank you very much. We have also a host country member of parliament, Azerbaijan's member of parliament, Fatima Khanum, asked for a floor, so I'm going to give the last chance to the host country to speak. Please.
Teşekkür ederim. Çok sağ olun. İlk önce ev sahibinin parlamentinin üzvü olarak bütün qonaqlarımızı ürəkdən salamlayıram, bu tədbirdən xoş gəlmisiniz deyirəm. Və bir balaca çıxış eləmək istirdim bu istiqamətdə. Mən Fatma Yıldırım, Azərbaycan parlamentində Təbii Sərvətlər, Energetika və Ekologiya Komitəsinin sədr müaviniyəm və Azərbaycanın bu istiqamətdə texnologiyaların tətbiqi ilə bağlı bir qısaca məlumat da vermək istirdim. Bugün bəşəriyyəti ciddi narahat edən problemlərdən biri qlobal iqlim dəyişikliyidir və dünya ictimaiyyəti COP29 çərçivəsində bu qlobal problemin həll yollarını axtarır. Bəşəriyyəti təhdid edən bu məsələ bütün dünya ölkələrinin birgə əməkdaşlığını tələb edir və mən hesab edirəm ki, IPU çox möhtəşəm bir platformadır. Bizlər parlamentarlar olaraq bütün bu mübarizədə əlbəttə ki, hüquqi normativ bazalarda təkmilləşdirməliyik, buna uyğunlaşdırmalıyıq. Və qeyd etmək istəyirəm ki, Azərbaycan parlamentində, hörmətli həmkarım Farizi mənim dediyi kimi, son illərdə çox önəmli qanunlar qəbul edibdir mübarizəyə dəstək olmaq üçün. Bugün Azərbaycan yaşıl iqtisadiyyatın inkişafını prioritet hesab edir. Bildiyiniz kimi işğaldan azad edilmiş ərazilərimiz ölkə başçısı tərəfindən yaşıl enerji zonası elan edilib və bütün infrastruktur layihələri yaşıl enerji meyarı əsasında qurulur. Azərbaycanda alternativ enerji ilə böyük layihələr həyata keçirilir. Yeni külək elektrik stansiyalarının, günəş elektrik stansiyalarının, eləcə də çoxlu sayda su elektrik stansiyalarının tikintisi də bunu göstərir. Bugünə qədər işğaldan azad edilmiş ərazilərdə 28 su elektrik stansiyası yenidən qurulub. Eləcə də COP29 çərçivəsində noyabrın 12-sində Cəbrayıl rayonunda 240 megawatt gücündə Şəfəq Günəş elektrik stansiyasının təməl qoyma mərasimində keçirilmişdi. Həmçinin Azərbaycan Dövlət Neft Şirkəti 15 noyabrda Birləşmiş Ərəb Əmirliklərinin Mazdar və Səudi Ərəbistan Akvapor şirkətləri arasında Xəzər dənizinin Azərbaycan sektorunda 3,5 gigawattda külək elektrik enerji istehsalı üzrə əməkdaşlığa dair anlaşma imzalayıbdır. Eləcə də Azərbaycanın işğaldan azad olmuş ərazilərin bərpasında ağıllı şəhər və ağıllı kənd yanaşmaları artıq tətbiq olunur. Eləcə də yaşıl enerji zonasının yaradılması, ekologiyaya mənfi təsirlərin azadılması təşəbbüslərinə birbaşa yardım edir. Artıq bizim Zəngilanda ağıllı kəndimiz, ağıllı kənd, ağıllı şəhər konsepsiyası olaraq həyat orada davam etməyə başlayıbdır və mən hesab edirəm ki, həqiqətən də bəşəriyyət qlobal iqlim dəyişikliklərinə məruz qaldığı bir vaxtda Azərbaycan qətiyyətlə yaşıl iqtisadiyyata keçid edib və bu yolda inamla adımlayır. Çox sağ olun, mənə söz
Çox sağ olun, təşəkkür edirik. Thank you very much. Now to wrap up our discussion, I'm going to give the panelists each 2.5 minutes to make the concluding remarks. Shall we start in reverse order maybe? First I will give the floor to Ms. Mira Al-Suwaidi, the Member of Parliament of United Arab Emirates, to make concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, moderator. Just listening to everyone's comments, I think as a member of parliament, I want to give just a little bit of a different type of insight. Most of you spoke about financing and the need of developed nations to commit to financing, right? But what's more important than having the financing at hand is to understand and identify your local priorities and needs. There is no point in putting forward financing if you don't understand what your local priorities and needs are. Once each nation starts to identify what their local priorities and needs are, then you can work with the private and public sector players. You can work with international organizations such as the IPU to start to build a budget and begin to prioritize. When prioritization happens, then you will be ready and be in a right position to accept the financing and do it in a way where you are accountable and committed. This type of planning is key. And once you have the artificial intelligence, it's available. Everything is available. For example, what Dr. Tatiana was talking about today, this tool is so powerful. It's so powerful for policy making. It's so powerful to put in place ways for us to improve our countries and for us to understand what our budgets are and what our needs are. So it all starts first at home. What can we do at home and how can we start building on that? Commitment and planning, I believe, is key. And once you do that, then slowly you'll start to identify what are the different needs that you have, and then you slowly start to look at that there are so many different avenues for you to leverage. And I think that's important for us to understand what is available for us to leverage today in order to get access to a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for collaboration between Masdar and Azerbaijan. We appreciate it very much. Now I pass the floor to Ms. Tatiana Esteves for concluding remarks.
Thank you, and thank you for all the remarks as well. Our challenges come from a point of view of the private or startup sector. It is true that in some cases it is very hard to bring our technology to certain countries where the regulatory framework does not exist. For example, there are many countries where rainwater collection is illegal, and we need to prove along with the governments that unlike rain, if we don't collect the fog or clouds, they go back into the atmosphere, and they can be a very good source for replenishment of groundwater basins, for example, which is one of the main reasons why rainwater is restricted in certain areas. It's the only replenishment method they can have. So building our first project with the countries that were in most need with the support of funding from the Food and Agriculture Organization, for example, that helped us build a first step into regulatory frameworks to adopt this type of water source for natural protected areas for water consumption. And this helps us bring a template to other municipalities, other government bodies that can use this as a starting point. So I invite you to take the first step into adopting innovation and integrating it hand in hand with the government, also with the private sector, which is important. On our end, we are working very diligently to translate our projects also into greenhouse emission reduction and carbon offsets. Also, this provides an additional sustainability for the projects we want to develop in the countries that are most affected by climate change and do not have the funds to implement them. So not only this becomes a sustainable option for them, but an additional income by adopting this type of solutions. One last point I wanted to make, we've been part of many workshops and sessions on NDCs, NAPs, BTRs, TERs, and many regulatory and frameworks that can help the governments to set up their goals and achieve them. I've seen very little conversations of the private sector coming in, and it is very important to integrate a whole holistic point of view because, yes, there are many countries that are setting up their objectives, but we need different types of solutions so that we can make sure that we can meet these goals. So, yes, the partnering with the legislatory body, it is, and parliamentary members, it is very important for the adoption of our solutions and innovations, and that can open the way also for other countries and other applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Tatiana Esteves. Final remarks come from Dr. Michal Nachmani. Please, the floor is yours.
Is my mic on? Great. We talk about technology, but I listen to all of you and I hear a lot of pain. And the main pain that I hear is about inequality. And it's about inequality between those who have and those who have not. And this could be between countries and within countries. And it would be wonderful if we could fix that right away, but we don't have time to fix everything right away in time to fix climate change and grid it down, get emissions down, and get resilience up very quickly. So I think when we talk about technology, there's a difference between who develops fast and who can use it fast. I am not envisaging starting a new Google on a small island developing state in time to fix climate change. This does not mean it is not possible at a later time scale, but we're unlikely to do it right now. So the question is, how can we take the technology that is already here, that is already available, and deploy it to be used very quickly and used very quickly? And I want to take you to health. And this is, again, a painful subject, but think about the COVID vaccinations. COVID vaccinations were developed by some, and then they were deployed. There were questions about the equitability of how they were deployed and the challenges in deploying them to the global south. You all know that. Many of you have been around in your parliaments and in your governments to see that. But the ability to develop those vaccinations became possible due to open science. For decades, scientists published their papers, put out genomic databases that allowed later companies to build innovations on top of that, and then to roll those innovations out very quickly when they needed to. This is what we need to do with climate. We have a lot of public data. We have a lot of data that governments and parliaments can force to be made public. And this is something that can be done fairly cheaply, being able to do this. And then take the innovations built on top of that in collaboration with the private sector, in collaboration with governments, and deploy that as quickly as possible. So my call for you is, wherever you are on the side of inequality, call for openness, call for transparency, call for sharing as much as we can. One molecule of CO2 that is emitted in one place is the same thing anywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was very, very interesting panel. It's a must to discuss technology and innovations and how it applies to climate change issues and how it applies to our daily work as legislators. Let's applaud the panelists for their great contribution, and thank you everyone for your comments. And this is the end of the 5th session. We look forward to see you in the next session. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now we are going for the lunch break. The lunch will be at the same place as yesterday, and I have a reminder that you are kindly invited to be back at the room by 13:45. We are trying to finish program earlier.
To counter the climate crisis, we need reliable data on where
I
greenhouse
will
gas emissions are coming from.
repeat it again that you are kindly invited to be back in the room by 13:45. We are trying to finish program earlier. Thank you for your attention.
Now provides highly detailed, recent and open source data. Now anyone, anywhere can quickly understand precisely where greenhouse gas emissions are coming from with data on carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and CO2 equivalent. Climate Trace detects emissions activities from every major economic sector and every country. Nearly all the data is independently sourced, rather than relying on self-reported data, so you can verify and fill gaps in your government's disclosures. Data on more than 350 million emitting assets are available on the free platform, including emissions estimates for individual power plants, factories, cargo ships, and more. To explore the data, go to climatetrace.org. Access the platform on a desktop or laptop computer, rather than a mobile device for the best user experience. Once on the website, click Explore Map, type your country name into the search bar and select a sector you wish to view. Climate Trace will show you sources of emissions on the map and the total emissions for your selection. Click on specific points on the map to learn more about each individual source or location. Company ownership data can also be previewed here, but the Data Downloads page offers additional ownership data. To see individual sources displayed by ranking, click on More Details on the bottom right side of the screen. You can download detailed data spreadsheets from the emissions map by clicking the download button on the bottom right side of the screen after you've set all your filters. You can also compare your country, a specific sector, and individual assets with others using the comparison tool. On the right and left sides of the screen, make different selections for country, sector, and more to see emissions totals compared side by side. The ranked lists in each column also show the highest emitting individual sources for your selections. As all signatories to the UNFCCC must disclose emissions and create more ambitious emission reduction targets, Climate Trace is a very useful tool for parliamentarians. Here are 3 ways for you to take action as a parliamentarian. Check Climate Trace. Use it to complete more accurate and timely emissions inventories and verify self-reported data from major emitters to identify potential gaps or differences. Review the ranked list of the biggest emitting sources in your country and make decisions based on the highest impact actions. Track the effectiveness of greenhouse gas reduction policies and progress toward net zero targets.